Something has happened in the last 72 hours, and no one is talking about it. Iran has started moving its uranium. Let me be clear about what this means. 460 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% purity are, at this very moment, leaving Iranian territory. 60%. And the threshold for a nuclear weapon is 90%. Now pay very close attention to what I'm about to say, because this is the part that most TV analysts won't explain correctly to you. That gap between 60 and 90% doesn't take years to close. It doesn't take months. Nuclear scientists will tell you that under the right conditions, it takes a matter of weeks. On paper, 460 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium is enough to produce 11 nuclear warheads. Read that again, slowly. 11 nuclear warheads. And Iran is handing it all over. But here's the point. Here's what every government intelligence agency on the planet is trying to figure out right now, and what no TV news program will tell you tonight. No one knows who's receiving it. This isn't a figure of speech. This isn't narrative hyperbole. The diplomatic sources who confirmed the transfer can't agree on the recipient. There are multiple names on the table, multiple candidates, and each of those candidates, if they end up with the material in their hands, shifts the entire global equation in a completely different direction. Because that's what this is really about. This isn't a non-proliferation agreement. This isn't a humanitarian gesture. This is 460 kilograms of near-weapons-grade uranium being taken off the board in the middle of an active war, and whoever receives it walks away with the most powerful piece of strategic leverage on the planet. Let that sink in for a second. Today we're going to do something the mainstream media isn't able to do, or isn't willing to do. We're going to break it down logically. Who wants this material? Who can actually receive it? Who's being left out and why? And by the end, you'll understand not only what's happening, but why it's happening, and what it means for everything that comes next. If this kind of analysis is what you're looking for, the kind no TV network will give you tonight, this channel exists because of you. Hit subscribe now because the next 48 hours are going to move very fast. Let's get to the facts, the confirmed ones, the ones no one disputes. The information about the uranium transfer comes from the Israeli newspaper Israel Hayom, citing 3 diplomatic sources drawn from the U.S. government and the broader regional intelligence community. The figure of 460 kilograms enriched to 60% had already been confirmed by the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. This is not speculation. It is the very UN agency that monitors nuclear material. Now for the harsh reality. This war, the U.S.-Iran war, officially began on February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched a coordinated attack. They killed Iran's supreme leader Khamenei. They killed high-ranking military commanders. They destroyed critical military infrastructure. And the calculation in Washington, pay attention to this, was clear. Iran will collapse in days, maybe a week. It will be broken. It will be desperate. It will come to the table on our terms. That tells you everything you need to know about how badly Washington misread this game. Because look at what Iran actually did. Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz. One decision, one move. And suddenly, 20% of the world's energy supply was choked off. The global economy began to bleed. Bangladesh, a country of 170 million people, was on the brink of becoming the first nation in the modern era to simply run out of fuel. The Philippines declared a national energy emergency. Germany, one of the most industrially sophisticated economies on Earth, announced that no male citizen under the age of 45 may leave the country for more than 3 months without military authorization. This is a prelude to national conscription. Germany is preparing for war because of what Iran did to the global energy supply. America did not break Iran. Iran has the world on its knees. After more than 40 days of war, Trump sits down to negotiate. America presents a 15-point proposal. Iran presents a 10-point plan. They meet in Islamabad on April 11th and 12th. And the talks collapse. Why? Because America violated the ceasefire while still talking about peace. Starting on April 13th, the U.S. Navy imposed a total blockade on Iranian ports and coasts. 10,000 Marines, sailors, and airmen, dozens of warships, approximately 10% of the entire U.S. naval force mobilized to squeeze Iran economically. And then, yesterday, April 19th, the U.S. destroyer USS Spruance fired multiple salvos at the engine room of an Iranian-flagged freighter named MV Tuska, disabled the ship, and U.S. Marines boarded and seized the vessel. Iran called this maritime piracy, and today, April 20th, Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs publicly declared that there are no plans to participate in the second round of negotiations. The spokesperson said, in essence, "It seems America isn't taking this seriously. These are the facts, with sources, dates, and numbers. Without that, nothing else matters." Here is the central revelation of this video, the part that the mainstream media isn't getting or isn't willing to deliver. The question no one is answering correctly is this: why can't the United States simply receive this uranium? On the surface, it seems obvious, right? America is the one demanding that Iran hand over the uranium, so why not receive it directly? Why does Russia end up as the most likely recipient? The answer to that question tells you practically everything you need to understand about the deep structure of this conflict. So let me walk you through it carefully. Reason 1. Iran does not trust America to safeguard this material in good faith. And I want to be very precise about what good faith means here. This isn't about feelings or historical grievances. This is about a structural problem. Iran's deputy foreign minister explicitly stated, he didn't hint at it, he explicitly stated that handing over the uranium directly to the United States is a non-starter. His words. Why? Because if America physically takes possession of Iran's uranium, Iran has surrendered its most powerful deterrent with absolutely nothing guaranteed in return. And Iran has already learned that lesson the hard way. In 2018, the United States unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, the nuclear deal. America made commitments. America broke those commitments. The sanctions came back anyway. So, from Tehran's perspective, the question is simple. What guarantee is there that America, after receiving the uranium, will actually fulfill its part of the bargain? Will it lift the blockade? Will it remove the sanctions? Will it provide security guarantees? If America violated the ceasefire while simultaneously sitting at the negotiating table in Islamabad, which it demonstrably did, why would Iran trust a much larger and far more complex set of commitments? The answer is, it wouldn't. And rationally, it shouldn't. Reason 2. America receiving the uranium is a domestic political impossibility within the United States itself. Think about this carefully. We're talking about 460 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%, material that, technically speaking, is one step away from weapons grade. What does America do with this material once it's in its hands? You can't simply stockpile it at an American facility without sparking a massive political controversy. Republicans would call it a security risk. Democrats would call it a war trophy. Nuclear non-proliferation experts would raise legal questions about the chain of custody and international law. And if the deal falls apart later, if Iran demands it back, if a future administration decides to use it as leverage, you have a constitutional and legal nightmare on your hands. More fundamentally, the U.S. legal and bureaucratic infrastructure to accept this kind of material transfer from a formally hostile state simply does not exist in a clean form. Congressional authorization would be required, new regulatory frameworks, international legal cover from the UN Security Council. And all of this would need to happen while the war is technically ongoing and Iran is promising retaliation for the seizure of the Tuska. This is not a negotiation. This is an administrative impossibility under fire. Reason 3. America publicly receiving the uranium destroys Iran from within. And this is perhaps the most underestimated point. Because when we talk about negotiation, we always focus on what governments want. But governments have populations, and populations have to live with the decisions their governments make. For the Iranian leadership, what remains of it after Khamenei's assassination, handing over uranium directly to the United States is not a diplomatic concession. It is a national humiliation of historic proportions. It is the image of Iran surrendering its most powerful strategic asset to the country that has just bombed its cities, killed its leader, and blockaded its ports. Domestically, this is unsustainable. The Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Ghalibaf, has already called the American terms conditions of surrender, not terms of peace. And he is right from the perspective of Iranian domestic politics. Any Iranian leader who signs off on handing over uranium directly to Washington is essentially signing his own political death warrant within Iran. But handing it over to Russia, that's a different story. Russia is an ally. Russia is a partner. Russia is the country that kept Rosatom technicians inside the Iranian nuclear plant while American bombs were falling. Transferring uranium to Russia can be framed domestically as a strategic repositioning among partners, not capitulation to an enemy. This distinction matters enormously. It is the difference between a deal that survives politically within Iran and one that does not. Reason 4. Russia actively wants to be the recipient, and it has been positioning itself for this role for months. Here I want you to zoom out and look at the big picture. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov has publicly acknowledged that Russia supplied certain military goods to Iran during this conflict. Russian state media has reported on the sharing of satellite imagery, drone tactics developed in Ukraine, and intelligence support. The Iranian ambassador to Russia explicitly stated that Russia and Iran maintain close consultations at the highest levels. And, critically, Russia has been managing Iran's civilian nuclear infrastructure through Rosatom for years. The Bushehr plant, commitments to finance a new reactor, technical personnel on the ground. From a purely logistical standpoint, Russia has the infrastructure, the expertise, the regulatory capacity, and the pre-existing relationship to manage this material safely and legitimately. Now add the geopolitical dimension. If Russia becomes the custodian of Iranian uranium, Russia becomes indispensable to any final resolution of this conflict. No agreement can be finalized without Moscow's consent. No verification process can proceed without Rosatom's cooperation. Russia, which entered this war as a supportive bystander, emerges as the essential broker, without having fired a single shot. This is extraordinary statecraft, and it is happening right now, in real time, while everyone is looking at Trump in the Strait of Hormuz. So let's put it all together very clearly. America cannot receive the uranium because Iran does not trust America, because the domestic political and legal infrastructure does not exist to handle this cleanly, and because it would require Iran to perform an act of public humiliation that no Iranian government could survive. Russia can receive the uranium because Iran trusts Russia, because Rosatom already has the infrastructure, because it gives Iran a face-saving framework, and because it elevates Russia's geopolitical position in a way that Moscow has been engineering for months. This is no coincidence. This is the game. Now, for anyone familiar with the history of American wars over the past few decades, none of this comes as a surprise. It's just the pattern repeating itself with different variables. I want to show you something. Because when most people hear about this war, they think of geopolitics, they think of ideology, they think of religion. But what they aren't doing is the math. And the math is where the truth lies. Let's look at the U.S. naval blockade. To enforce this blockade, the United States mobilized over 10,000 military personnel, dozens of warships. They used approximately 10% of their entire naval capacity. And the result? They intercepted between 23 and 25 commercial ships. Now the Iranian side. Iran laid naval mines, creating a 1,394 square kilometer danger zone in the Strait of Hormuz. Cost? A few $1,000,000. To clear these mines, America had to send Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, ships that cost over $2 billion each, through that danger zone. A few million versus a few billion. A cheap mine versus $1 billion warship. Read that again, slowly. And it gets worse. America claims it has now destroyed 95% of Iran's naval mine stockpile. But Iran's Mosaic defense, that decentralized military structure in which all 31 provinces operate as independent combat cells, means that even if you destroy 95% of the capacity, the remaining 5% can still close the strait. The strait is narrow. You don't need many mines to create chaos. That's what I'm talking about when I say asymmetric math. Iran isn't trying to win a conventional war against America. It's trying to make the war too expensive for America to continue. And right now, the math is working in its favor. This pattern isn't new. It's exactly the same mechanism that worked in Vietnam. The Viet Cong with cheap equipment, tunnels, attrition tactics, and a superpower burning through billions of dollars a year until it could no longer sustain the conflict politically and economically. It's the same mechanism that worked in Iraq. It's the same mechanism that has worked in Afghanistan for 20 years. The insurgency doesn't need to win. It just needs to avoid losing long enough for the cost to collapse the political will of the stronger side. Iran has read this playbook. Iran has studied this for decades. The Mosaic defense is no accident. It is a military doctrine designed specifically to do what Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan did, only with oil in the middle. And that's where things get worse for Washington. Because the Iranian ambassador to Russia, Kazim Jalali, has just given an interview to the Russian newspaper Vedomosti, and what he said is extraordinary. In essence, what Trump failed to achieve during the war, he will not achieve during negotiations. This is not a statement born of anger. This is a strategic statement from a country that genuinely believes it is winning. And here's the thing. They may be right. Because the historical calculus is relentless. A superpower can destroy an adversary's conventional capabilities in weeks. It cannot destroy asymmetric capabilities in years. It cannot destroy the will to resist. And in war, will is everything. The Pentagon knows this. It's in the manuals. It's in the post-war analyses of every American conflict since 1965. And yet every time, the same conviction. This time will be different. This time they will collapse quickly. They don't collapse. And Iran, after 40 days of bombing, with its supreme leader dead, its economy bleeding under a naval blockade, is not coming to the table asking for mercy. It is negotiating from a position that, by any realistic historical measure, is one of relative strength. That is the context. That is what history tells you. And history is happening again, right now, with uranium as the main stake. But here is the layer that most experts are deliberately ignoring. And that is the part that will keep you up tonight. Why is everyone, America, Russia, China, the entire international community, why is everyone so intensely focused on this war? You might think it's about oil. It's partly about oil. You might think it's about American hegemony. It's partly about that too. But the thing driving the deepest anxiety in every government capital in the world right now, the thing that is truly at the center of all this, is uranium. And here comes the part that most analysts completely miss, because they're so focused on the Middle East that they're not paying attention to what's happening simultaneously in East Asia. And what's happening in East Asia right now is extraordinary. Because of the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, because of this energy crisis, Japan and South Korea are being pushed toward a decision that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago. They are seriously considering developing their own nuclear weapons. I'll give you the data because I don't believe in making claims without numbers. According to a survey by the respected Asan Institute for Policy Studies, conducted in April 2025, 76% of South Koreans now support the development of an indigenous nuclear weapons capability. 76%. That is the highest figure Asan has ever reported in history. And in the same survey, less than half of respondents believe the United States would actually use nuclear weapons to defend South Korea if North Korea attacked first. Why is this happening? Because Trump, the same Trump who is threatening to destroy Iranian power plants, diverted the THAAD missile defense systems that had been promised to Seoul. He sent them to the Middle East instead. South Koreans are watching this. They're doing the math. And they're concluding, we can no longer count on America. Now let's talk about Japan. Japan already possesses, legally, at this very moment, approximately 45 tons of weapons-grade plutonium, 8 tons physically within Japan. Japan also has the capacity to enrich its own uranium. It has ballistic missile technology developed through its satellite launch programs, advanced fighter jets capable of nuclear delivery. What Japan does not have is a nuclear weapon. But here is the concept that experts call nuclear latency, the ability to build a nuclear weapon very quickly without actually crossing the threshold. Experts estimate that Japan could assemble a nuclear device in just a few months, if the political decision were made. And Japan's Prime Minister, Takaichi Sanae, who has just led her party to a massive electoral victory, has left open, explicitly open, the possibility of abandoning Japan's 3 non-nuclear principles, the principles that have governed Japanese policy since World War II. Right at this moment, today, we are at a crossroads, and I want to be very honest with you because I think you deserve honesty rather than false comfort. There are 2 paths ahead of us, and neither is good. Path number 1. Iran agrees to transfer the uranium to Russia. A framework agreement is established. America accepts this as a partial victory, not the complete denuclearization it demanded, but something it can sell politically to its domestic audience. The Strait of Hormuz reopens. The ceasefire holds. On the surface, it sounds like the happy ending, right? But think about what that actually means. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what's really going on. Not the surface narrative, but the real game beneath it. Hit the bell, because the next update will arrive sooner than you expect. And if you're not subscribed yet, this is the kind of analysis you'll find here and nowhere else. Because 460 kilograms of uranium are still on the move. Right this very second. While you're watching this video, no one knows where. And when we find out, you'll hear it here first. We're tracking this every day, every single day. Until next time.